first of this month's reconstructions is of a crime that you may have read about. Indeed, you may have thought that it was solved. It's been in the news quite a bit. It's about two girls from the same school in Leicestershire who were both 15, both sexually assaulted and both murdered. But there were 3 years between the killings.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to a true crime story. This one is going to leave me really downbeat in this video because I don't like the way it ends at all. Not that I like how many of them end, but a lot of them you feel like there's a bit of justice. So we were in Narborough. The infamous Black Pad murder is just behind me. I'm walking away from it, and it was here in July 1983 where a young 15-year-old girl was brutally attacked, raped, strangled and left for dead. Now, the perpetrator was eventually caught using, for the first time ever, DNA, but not before somebody else was arrested for the murder. I'll get into the story now.
The body of a schoolgirl found murdered this morning has been named as 15-year-old Lynda Mann from Narborough, Leicestershire. Lynda's body was found just yards from her home by a passerby.
This lane is known locally as the Black Pad. It's used mainly by people walking their dogs, pedestrians from Enderby and from Narborough.
It was unusual because she was always very good, always on time, or she would let us know if she was going to be late.
At that time of night he was taking a chance because usually this lane is fairly well used by people. He knew that it was getting dark. She was alone and the opportunity for him was there, and that's why he took it.
So the Black Pad is behind those trees there, just so you know, in relation where I'm speaking to you from. So if I show you this little map of where the bodies were found, I can neither confirm nor deny that this is correct. But the body is said to have been found basically in the corner there for Lynda Mann. Yeah, really grim. And I imagine it was deep into the shrubbery. I don't know, because this is a well-worn path now. I don't know if that was the case in the mid-80s or 83. Also on my map it says that this is a football pitch, which no, it's not. Times change though. Lynda Mann was just babysitting she's 15 years old, just for a bit of pocket money. So she was babysitting, and the Black Pad's just a walkway that local people know about, and she was just taking the walkway home when she was attacked from behind. Brutally, savagely attacked, murdered, raped, strangled with a piece of cloth, piece of material, some clothing. And I'll put over some pictures. This parish was in an absolute panic, an absolute frenzy that something like this could happen here, as everywhere is when it happens. But there's very dangerous, evil people everywhere, unfortunately. They would find her and they would launch a huge manhunt, and they would go door to door. Narborough, which is here, Enderby, which you'll see plenty of in a minute, and Littlethorpe. And Littlethorpe is where a Colin Pitchfork lived with what would end up being his 2 children and his wife. At this point in July 1983, he had just had his first kid. He, pronouns being Colin Pitchfork. And when he committed this murder, Lynda Mann, his baby was in the car at the top of the road, which is so grim. But when the police went door to door, they didn't suspect Colin Pitchfork, who was well known locally. He worked at Hampshire bakeries and he was an expert cake sculpture decorator. You know, those fancy cakes, he would do that. And he was known, and there was no real suspicion on him. And his wife also said that she goes to the gym on a Monday, so Colin was babysitting their baby. So no suspicions arose on Colin, even though he'd been done for indecent exposure in the past.
Not far from where Lynda had been strangled, Dawn Ashworth died in broadly similar circumstances. Suspicion fell upon a 17-year-old youth who lived locally. He was arrested, and in a tape-recorded interview, he made a statement and was charged with Dawn's murder. But with nothing to link that suspect with the earlier crime, police used for the first time in criminal history a complex forensic test known as DNA, or genetic fingerprinting. What follows is a reconstruction of Dawn's final afternoon in her home village, Enderby, near Leicester. It's summer holidays, and Dawn is helping out at the village newsagents.
You got my wages?
Yes, there you are. Thanks so much for helping me. Have a nice holiday, and don't forget to send me a postcard.
I won't. Bye.
Okay, bye, love. Ta-da.
This week's wages were especially welcome. Dawn and her family were off to Norfolk for their holidays. This is £10 Lane, which goes to Narborough. It's paved and lit at this end. But where it meets the M1, it narrows and eventually peters out into a track. At this point, Dawn had to make a choice. She could go either left across the motorway on the footbridge and go past the radiator works down to a dual carriageway, or straight on and down the track.
I always used to say to her, now, I would hate to think of you coming down here on your own in an evening. And I always used to impress on her, you should always use the footbridge. Always go over the footbridge that way. But, as I say, it is a shortcut, and it was a nice day. And it is a well-used route, there's no doubt about it.
In late July, the lane would have been heavily overgrown with shoulder-high summer foliage.
So it's really strange doing these kind of videos when you walk in and you know this is somebody's last ever walk, which is so grim. And you see something that you're seeing from documentaries and stuff, it always just, I don't know. I think that's why I do videos on location, you just feel it a bit more, I guess, I don't know. But anyway, July 1986, a 15-year-old Dawn Ashworth, this was her last ever walk, and I'm sure I'm putting footage of the Crime Watch thing where she made the choice here where you can either go down the motorway side, you could go down the motorway side, or you could take the shortcut. And she took the shortcut and she went this way. I mean, this happened July 1986. How do you feel like, as a society, we do now? Do you still feel that teenagers or women do still have to be careful which path they take? Because the world is evil. I think they probably still do, and that is just horrendous. So this is the route. I find it really hard to say, oh, this is the route she should have taken, because people should be able to take any route they damn well want. So, one brutal murder of a 15-year-old in a small parish like Norbury is enough to terrify the county, not just the village. But two within a few hundred yards terrified the country. And the police knew they needed to catch the perpetrator quickly, because somebody doing this is feeding off it, and they will act again. But it's around here that the case takes a turn, because a 17-year-old called Richard Buckley was riding around on his moped around in the area we are now, and said to the police, "Oh, what are you doing?" And they said, "Oh, we're looking for the girl." And he said, "Oh, you're looking in the wrong place," which is a weird thing to say. And they later found out that this Richard Buckley, who had learning disabilities, that's neither here nor there, but Lynda Mann was found dead in the grounds of a psychiatric hospital. This is at the time of Lynda Mann's murder. This Richard was working at the hospital, and so he was arrested and charged with the murders of Dawn Ashworth and Lynda Mann. He would confess to Dawn Ashworth's murder, but refused to accept responsibility for Lynda Mann's. But the police thought that they had their man.
At the end of £10 Lane is King Edward Avenue and Leicester Road, a busy dual carriageway. It's now about 4:25 p.m.
So this is where Dawn was trying to get to, these houses. In the Crime Watch reconstruction, they mention about the guy running up the embankment, sprinting up there and running across the M1, which is up there. I don't know if it was ever confirmed that that was Colin Pitchfork or not, but I think that's the embankment. I haven't got the documentary in front of me, obviously, because I'm walking, but this is where Dawn Ashworth was trying, well, not trying, this is where Dawn Ashworth was going to, and then her friends weren't in, so she went back up to return home.
It seems Dawn decided not to go searching in the village, but to head straight home. A motorist saw someone who looked like Dawn going back across the dual carriageway towards £10 Lane. The time was now 4:40. From here, it's 15 minutes walk to home. It was a lovely July late afternoon, though there was a shower at about this time. Dawn got within 100 yards of where the track becomes an open pathway. Somehow she was taken off the track, was raped and strangled.
Dawn, she panicked and ran through the gate into this field, and she ran into danger. He followed her into the field, spoke to her, told her all about himself, raped her, decided then he'd given too much information away, strangled him, and then dumped the body in some undergrowth.
I'll be honest, I can't say it definitively that it's here where she ran down. These posts and gates look the same to the documentary. This doesn't, obviously, but it's about where they describe. Maybe that fence down there in the middle, so, and it's not really important. Path's not long enough, it probably could only be here, but she's about a 1 minute walk to the golf course down there. Imagine that little footpath might even take you. Obviously this is the late 80s, so it's totally changed. And she's like probably less than 5 minutes to the news agent she worked in up here. So she, like, it's crazy. Oh, it's just horrendous, isn't it? Right, I'll get to the next thing. So we're at the black pad again. It's just to the side of me. All that's the black pad of the scene of the first murder. So Superintendent David Baker was trying to get Richard Buckland for the second murder. The psychiatric hospital that he worked in, Richard Buckland, is just over to my northeast. I'll try and walk up there and take a couple of pictures. This must have been the grounds. I mentioned it was killed on the ground, so this must have been the old grounds for it. But this case, we're in Leicester, just on the outskirts of Leicester, and Superintendent David Baker was reading, I like to think, got the paper from the news agent Dawn Ashworth worked in, just nice little bit of symmetry for me, and was reading, I like to think, the Leicester Mercury, and read about a Alec Jeffreys, who was a scientist at the University of Leicester and was working on groundbreaking new technology called genetic fingerprinting, which you and I would know as DNA. And it was being worked on extensively here, just a matter of chance, not fact. And David Baker, wanting to get Richard Buckland for not one Dawn Ashworth but also Lynda Mann, enlisted the help of Alec Jeffreys. They met up. Now Alec Jeffreys told him of his work, and so he said he gave him the blood samples to do some genetic fingerprinting, as was the term in the 80s, to make it more understandable for people, because DNA is brand new. It's weird. I'm an 80s kid, so it's always been about. Now, through doing this, they realised two things. Number one, that the person that did these two crimes were in fact the same person. They could tell this by the blood and by the semen, but they could also definitively tell David Baker that it wasn't Richard Buckland. So, with Richard Buckland ruled out, they weren't back to square one, because they had the genetic code of the killer. They just needed to get the right sample. So what happened here, which is Narborough, Enderby, where I've taken you, and Littlethorpe, the neighbouring village, was they asked everyone under the age of 40, male to above 18, to go and give a blood sample to be ruled out.
The world's first DNA manhunt is underway. Thousands of men from the villages of Narborough, Littlethorpe and Enderby have this week been attending voluntary blood tests in an attempt to catch the killer of 2 Leicestershire schoolgirls.
Did you have any doubts about coming tonight?
Not at all, no. I think the person responsible might have.
All men aged between the ages of 18 and 34 have received a letter asking them to attend a screening.
This obviously terrified Colin Pitchfork because he would be found out. And so, like the coward that he is, he went around his work and begged for somebody to take the blood sample for him. He would tell people that he had already done it as a favour. He'd taken the blood sample as a favour to someone who had his past. He would say somebody was done for indecent exposure, he had kids, so I felt bad. Now you need to do it for me. And some fool fell for it. I believe his name is Ian Kelly. He said, I'll take the blood sample for you. So they went to the place where they were doing the blood samples. They had met beforehand at a local train station. They had gone to the photo booth and they had swapped the passport picture from Colin Pitchfork to Ian Kelly. This was a hard thing to do, but if we remember, Colin Pitchfork was a master baker sculptor. He had very nimble hands and it wasn't a problem. I imagine for you older folk, passports back in the day just had like a little slit for a picture, not an imprinted picture, I assume. But it worked initially, and they couldn't find anybody for the double murders. And Alec Jeffreys, who is now Sir Alec Jeffreys, of course, for the groundbreaking work in DNA that he did, which has solved cases all around the world, the man has just single-handedly given, well, not single-handedly, but has helped give the police their most valuable weapon in solving cases and cold cases. But they were worried, because this was the first time this was being implemented, that it hasn't worked, so the public are going to think this is just a fad and it don't work. But the police, in lots of stories, get bad press, and certainly in the year 2021, people don't have a lot of time for the police, which is unfortunate, because we need them, and it's not a very attractive job anymore. But they believed in this science, and they should be congratulated for that. They were convinced that the science was right, and what had happened, that somebody had fraudulently done a fake blood sample. Now, there was a lady in a pub with Ian Kelly, the man who'd given the fake blood sample, and he was almost boasting that he had done this for a mate, what a good guy I am. And the woman was pretty grossed out by Colin Pitchfork because he was a disgusting little git, and she went to the police and said, somebody's given a false sample, you need to check Colin Pitchfork. And they did, and they arrested him, and he was convicted, and he was sentenced for these 2 murders. I went to take a picture of the psychiatric hospital, and it was pointless, so even when I'm poorly, I'm doing this extra stuff for you. Please like and subscribe, I guess that's a good time to ask. Right, so awful case, but it has a definitive ending. Good, he can't do any more damage. The reason I've been downbeat is because recording this November the 4th, Colin Pitchfork has been released. He was released on September the 1st of this year. So for a little over 8 weeks, he's a free man again. I try and stay pretty neutral on true crime cases and stuff. Just if people want to have a chat and stuff about it in the comments, more than welcome, but I try and just do the facts But it's hard with this one. He raped and murdered 2 children. Imagine, or don't imagine, but what were their final moments like? He brought upon 2 children literal hell and ended their lives. And now he can walk back here to the spot he did these things, and he's destroyed 2 beautiful young lives and a family I can't even imagine. And bit of private information, which is unlike me, I used to work in offender rehabilitation, and I found it impossible because of people like this guy. I just don't see why. I don't see how we can let him be released. He has the most strict license conditions ever, they say. So in actuality, he probably can't come back here. So we're back at the fork in the road. I was on that Crime Watch bit. I thought I'd do another kind of goodbye because I was getting distracted by that guy behind me, as you can tell. So I try and stay neutral on all these. I wonder, like, I mean, I've got a feeling everyone's going to feel the same as me. I mean, people know more about him than me, and the people that know more about him have made the decision that he should be released. I respect that. I just think there's something like this in somebody. I don't know. Can it be removed? I don't know. I don't have the answers. I just feel like if he's out, which he is, and the world has changed a lot since the late 80s, I just wonder if he thinks being out's not worth it. It's crap. I prefer to be in prison, and he can just do something, and that terrifies me. And probably the worst twist of it is, it shouldn't terrify me as just a compassionate human being, because let's be honest, he wouldn't pick on me. He would go for somebody a lot more vulnerable because he's a coward. Anyway, I'm not well, I'm grumpy, and I didn't get all my steps in. It's amazing how short everything is. Like, this is 10 Pound Lane, it's tiny. The black pad, even smaller, and the distance between where the 2 bodies were found, if we believe that map, I'll put it up, but yards away from each other. I can't say I hope you enjoyed. If you watched, thank you. Please like and subscribe. A few more true crimes in the future, well, quite a lot. I need to get back to doing music ones because they don't leave me feeling as icky as this. But thank you. Take care.